606,
7.
or 706. Well, I'll get things straight.
It's the pressure.
First order of business is the minutes from the 15th of November.
I'll move them.
Second.
Any changes or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now it's time for Jeff to put on this dog and pony show. I was gonna do you last because of the way we had it set up.
Nice thing for her to do.
I'm sorry, is that my cue?
Yes.
All right, so, hey, this is a great showing. Thank you guys for coming. Some of you I only get to see this time of year, so it's kind of nice. So what we're gonna show you tonight is the budget, and I just wanna kind of review where we are. Because in the past, there's been some confusion of what tonight is. So just to remind us, what we're doing is essentially, we're here now creating a budget that forecasts what will actually exist in 11 months. We have a town budget committee that we met with in October to kind of talk about what things look like from the past year, what things are looking towards this current year. And starting in September, the school starts to build what is the school's, the school, not the school board's budget. And we start to build it, and around October, we meet with the school board. And we present the school board and the finance committee, and we meet and talk and analyze and evaluate. And then in December, we have a school board meeting in which we are aware, because you guys have already had discussions about what things are happening in other parts of the town budget. We have a little bit of information from the town. Then in January, there's a town budget committee. And then the school board and the budget committee kind of go back and forth. And January, there is another meeting. And then there's the public hearing. And the town meeting. And then the start of the budget. And then we start over. We are right there right now. This is where we are in the process. Tonight, we are presenting the first draft of the school board's budget. So what that means is, there's a lot of preliminary thinking in this. Now what's happened in the past is that people are like, oh my gosh, the school is going to increase by whatever. That's not the case tonight. Tonight we are trying to present where we are in the working, in the development of a draft. And the budget committee is working with us to help develop a budget that supports the goals of the town. So tonight, we're going to present the draft budget. We're going to share the decisions and variables that we consider in this budget. We're going to collect your initial questions and suggestions and general impressions. And then we're going to discuss your general budgetary targets, what you would like to see us accomplish. In January 8th, after you've had time with the document, you're going to be able to ask us greater questions in greater detail. We are going, as a board, we are going to collect those questions and recommendations and take them back to the school board and figure out how we can respond to the goals that you set. January 15th, we're going to review the school board's examination. We're going to talk about, okay, this is what we heard at the last board meeting on January 5th. Here's what we think. And also here is data that we have from high schools and special ed that at this point we are only speculative of what high school tuitions are going to be. By January 15th, we'll have heard from those districts and we can use specific numbers. We're going to present the impact on the next draft of the budget based upon your feedback and provide and then for you to provide general impression of the current budget status. Hopefully at this time, because this year is a year that is going to be, the CBA is going to be discussed, which is the teachers' collective bargaining agreement. their teacher's contract. That is being negotiated and has been being negotiated since October. We'll be able to present some of the details of that, hopefully. Then the school board meets to approve the budget and the warrants, keeping in mind that the CBA will be its own warrant, its own separate warrant. February 5th is the public hearing of this committee, and then we go to town meeting. So I want to make sure that people understand that, you know, that's where we are in our budget process. So this is not our final budget, this is the budget that we have developed to this point. We want to get feedback from it. We want to be able to get, we'll need more time to get specifics from, you know, high school tuitions and so forth. The parts of the budget look something like this, and these are kind of like the historical proportions of the budget. I share that just because that's something to keep in mind. Then there are also things in the budget that have to do with trusts. So we have a high school trust. A high school trust with a big balance. So that's pretty much funded. Special ed trust, which we think is funded. It's a reserve trust. The high school trust is an active expenditure. That's what we want it to be, an active expenditure trust. Special ed trust is a reserve trust. And typically what we like to do is like to have about the cost of one out-of-district person to the school of the deaf or the blind, which is about $250,000 a year. We did have one student a couple of years ago that moved in the middle of the summer, and they cost us about $300,000 per year. $300,000 in a district our size that moves the mark. Yeah. Retirement trust is a planned expense, so this is to fund the commitments we have to teachers' retirement, and so when those teachers retire, that trust will be zero. The enrollment trust we hold at the cost of one teacher with 5 years experience, a master's degree, taking full family medical, and the retirement costs, the Social Security costs, the Medicaid costs, and all those things. And then a building and ground trust, which is also a reserve trust. So those are our balances of our current trusts. So I want to start with high school. When we figure our budget for high school, we begin with an actual head count from the current year. So we take our current 8th grade and we say, okay, those 8th grade, they're going to be 9th graders next year. 9th graders can be 10th graders, 10th graders can be 11th graders, and 11th and 12th graders can drop off the face of the earth. We take that sum, and that's our projected enrollment. In 2017, we initiated a long-term strategy to use the high school trust to reduce the amount necessary to pay high school tuition. In 2017, we said we're going to reduce the amount that we put towards high school by $15,000, about one student. In 2018, the amount budgeted for high school was reduced by 105, based upon the actual head count. In 2019, we wanted to spend $50,000, based upon actual head count. Historical actual high school enrollment numbers would suggest that there's a greater chance, 2 to 3, of gaining enrollment from the year before's actual enrollment. So if you look at the 2018 or 8 to 2017, what has happened is, based upon or from the previous year's actual, we've gained 1 student, 1 year 13, down 1, 5 and 1, up 1, up 2, down 0, down 2, at it completely flat, +4, +6. So 6 out of 9 years, enrollment increased from actual. 2 of 9 years, it reduced. The average of the reduction was about 3.5. The average overall 13 was 2. The average of the years when it increased was 7.3. So, in 2017-18, there was 101 students that were anticipated to go into high school. There they are, down there. We budgeted to withdraw $15,000 from the trust. There it is. By the following fall, our number fell from 100 to 92, and several students' high school choices changed. That was a -9, the actual in the fall. -9. You look back historically, would you have guessed that the chances of losing 9 students was likely or unlikely? What do you think?
About 0.
Well, close to 0, right? We'd never seen that, but it happened. Weird, bizarre. These changes result in a $150,000 reduction to the actual expenditure of high school. So no money was drawn from the trust as planned. The savings covered this out-of-district student, that placement, and the remainder was returned to reduce taxes. In 2018-19, 104 students were scheduled to enroll in high school. So there's your actual fall. They're down the 9 students from the previous year. We add the 8th grade. We budget 105 to draw from the trust to reduce high school tuition. By the following fall, our numbers fell from 104 to 100 students, and several students' high school choices changed. We dropped 4. These changes result in $104,000 of reduction of actual expenditure in high school. So no money was drawn from the trust as planned, and the savings resulted in a surplus which was used to reduce taxes this year. Wow. -9. Then, -4. Who could have seen that coming? What pattern would predict that? Well, I don't know of one. I didn't see one. But that's what happened. In 2019-2020, 100 students were scheduled to enroll in high school. There they are down there. We anticipated to spend $50,000. We budgeted $50,000. Or actually what we said is we're gonna fund $50,000 less in the budget to be able to draw from the trust. There's the $50,000. By the fall, this fall, our numbers fell from 100 to 89, 11. Wow. These changes are projected to be about a $220,000 reduction to the actual expenditure for high school. So it's likely that no money will be drawn from the trust as planned, and we will likely contribute to a surplus to the town. Surpluses do not represent padding in the school budget. The last 3 years, based upon historic numbers, were atypical and therefore difficult to project. And we're not even sure now whether or not this is a new pattern or this is an aberration. Do you guys know? Do you guys know something?
I have a question, Jeff.
Yeah.
How many of these are private school
Very good question.
versus people moving?
Yep. So in these 3 years, we've seen an increase in number of students who are enrolling in private schools. But the largest number comes from individual families who have a large number of high school students moving out. So one family moving out and taking 3 students with them.
But then you don't know, like, you could try to use that as a prediction, but you don't know who's gonna move in.
Precisely.
Right, and the private school numbers, when they may indicate a trend, it's not the same problem, which is, a family might have 3 kids who all, elect to go to private school, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a town-wide trend happening.
Right.
Because if there are 2 families and, they have 2 or 3 kids who all choose private school.
The other piece is, there's not a guarantee they'll get in. There's not a guarantee that they'll stay in. And if they don't decide that a boarding school is their choice, they come back and they're ours again. So we have about 6 students now that are out there that we're not paying for, that we're liable to, that we have responsibility to if they were to choose their placement. I don't know if they will.
Sorry.
Yeah, so let me just, Jimmy, and then we'll come back. So these are our current class enrollments. Next year is 30, 16, 31, and 20. So there's 97 students. We can count their heads. This also includes Crossroads students who live in Lyme. The key is to predict what will happen to this number in 9 months. So if you can guess it right, I will give you $100 to invest, and I will expect 1,000% return. And it will help me with my taxes. We estimate that 3 students may attend a private school or move. we don't know, but we're saying, yeah, we're looking at each kid thinking, where do you think they'll go? Do you think they might move? So we're saying, we're guessing, although we don't have any confirmation from family or anything like that, that we think 3 students are gonna move. So we're gonna reduce that from 97 actual to 94. And furthermore, we're gonna double it down. We're gonna say, we don't think anyone's gonna move to Lyme that has a high school kid. We are currently working on a long-term planning span. Did I say spending plan? Spending plan for the trust to determine the amount above the 3 fewer, which we will fund out of the trust. Now, there's a chance that the 3 will come. We don't know, but we feel pretty good that they won't. So what we're doing, and we've been doing for the last couple months, is trying to figure out what is a long-term plan for reduction of the high school trust. And we'll have that proposal for you for our next board meeting, for next town budget committee. So here are the considerations that we're looking to avoid. Let's just say that we said, you know what, we're gonna set the cap to be 90 students. 90 students is the 10-year average of high school enrollment, actual, not what existed the year before. So if we said 90 was where we wanted to cap it, we'd have to pull 215,000 next year, 88,000 the following year, 317 the following year, 186 the next year, and 94 the next year. And these numbers presume automatically that in the 9th grade, 1 fewer 8th grader will enroll in high school. So it's assuming 1 student's gonna go to a private school or move each year. So what would happen is, by the 4th year, all of a sudden, boom, our trust runs out, and we have to make up the difference from 90 in that 1 year. That's $83,000. So in 1 year, bam, we hit basically what would be a 1-point-something% increase just in high school enrollment. And we have $0 in our trust. And then the following 2 years, we would just have to absorb whatever the rate of change is. So determining high school expenses. This year, our overall high school instruction is less, $17,971. And we are not saying at this point how much we're drawing from the trust. That's what we're gonna be working out for you at the next budget meeting. But this is presuming that 3 students don't show up next year, and no new students move in. Special education, which is another driver, big portion of our budget. High school special education is down $62,166, and that's because there's 1 fewer out-of-district placement. We have another out-of-district placement student that will be in out-of-district placement this year, following Christmas. We're not sure how long that's gonna last. What we're gonna presume is, we don't have any money in there for it in the budget, but what we're gonna say is, all right, so if it happens, if they continue to be in this out-of-district placement next year, we'll be on the hook for about $50,000 to $100,000 that we would draw from the trust. Special education K-8 is up $638, and that's largely due to health insurance and hourly rate for paras changing. Psychological speech and OT services are up $1,481. Actually, I have to change that amount. That's due to existing staff picking up and some grant work. That's actually, we just had to change it. It's 11,000 something. It's going to show up later in the presentation. Our overall special education, with the accurate number, is down $60,046.70 from last year. Personnel. This year, we are grateful that we do not have any variable staffing conditions due to medical leave or enrollment. And the reason for that, that we're grateful for that, is because in a budget, we have to say, all right, we know we have to hire this person. We're gonna guess the salary of the person that we'll end up hiring. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, we have to put in a placeholder. This provides greater predictability for budget lines, which deal with staffing. Furthermore, we were able to reduce the substitute line by $30,000 as we no longer anticipate a long-term substitute. The teacher's contract, or CBA, all the costs associated with increases for teachers are part of this separate warrant, so they are not reflected in the current budget. So changes to individual categories. So I am going to take us through the budget and kind of talk about the changes, and these are in order if you want to follow them. As I mentioned, high school instruction is down 17,971. This incorporates a reduction of 3 students from actual, and it presumes a 2.5% increase to tuition rates. As we get closer to January, we'll hear from those schools, and then we'll plug in actual. And so this number will fluctuate. High school special education is down 62,166, as I mentioned to you before. The reduction of an out-of-district student, the potential student to be taken from the trust. We're presuming no new students needs to enroll, and we've reduced service costs. Regular instruction is up 58,471. I want to remind people that, again, this is not a result of salary increases. That will be done in the warrant.
So what is that from?
Funny you should ask that question. Here's the answer. The first thing is, you'll notice that in the budget, we moved foreign language from its own little section into this category. Because special language is a regular part of our instruction. That constitutes $134,000 across multiple lines. We reduced subs 30,000. Staff members, non-teachers, teachers, administrators, not teachers, but staff and administrators. It's a 2.5% increase for staff, for those staff members, and that's included here. Our health insurance went up 5%, and our dental insurance went up 5%. This is, it also includes the shared increase to health insurance that the school and employees experience. The assessment line, software licensing and computer equipment was also adjusted by the amounts that you can see for yourself. Special education, up $638, 2.5% raise for staff. We reduced the staff member to 0.5, or reduced 0.5 of a position. It also includes the shared increase for health insurance and the number of participants. We had people that last year didn't participate, this year they do, therefore now we're carrying the cost of that insurance. We reduced various expenditure lines. For any teaching staff, their increase that would hit this line is not included in the budget, it's included in the CBA warrant. Guidance. This was largely a result of a change in category for health insurance, and the salary is, would be changed through the CBA. Health insurance, or health services. Increased to health insurance, 2.5% raise, and increased software costs. Psych speech OT services. Psych is up 1,600, speech is down 130, and OT-PT is up $10,011. This was the amount that was incorrect before. I had written 1,000 something. The correct amount is, it's up $10,011. Professional and service, professional development, on-site professional development is a 0 line. We increased one line, which was basically paying for consultants, but reduced the lines that had to do with retirement and Social Security and all those things, because those we're not paying people internally to do that professional development on site. The library, so this is an example of where last year we had somebody else, we had somebody pegged for that position. We felt, based upon our last search, that we would find somebody with very little experience, single, and that wasn't the case. We were very, very fortunate to find somebody with a great deal of experience, or, well, more experience than none. And the result was change in insurance and salary and stuff from what we had budgeted. School board is down $12,927. We moved $3,500 from the school board to the admin budget. We decreased legal services. It was, we had more this year because of the CBA year, and we won't need that next year. And we decreased our advertising budget because we don't have as many positions that we expect to fill. SAU is up $7,423. We reduced supply lines. This is a shared increase for health insurance, 2.5% raise, and retirement costs. Admin is up $28,000, the majority of which is a result of the fact that we now have a full-time secretary in the front office who is one person as opposed to was two people before, so neither of those people took insurance. This full-time person requires insurance, and also she can work summer hours, which is of a great help. Then also increased cost to insurance, 2.5% raise for all the administrators and staff in this admin section, retirement costs, and we reduced supplies and postage. Buildings and grounds, we reduced $5,397. It's a result of change in insurance participation. Previously, we had hired somebody that required insurance. The person we hired didn't. But we do still have people who do carry insurance, so that their cost of insurance increases there. 2.5% raise for those people in this category. Reduced repairs, upkeep, and pellets. Increased trash, snow removal equipment repairs, insurance, and propane. Transportation. We no longer need to lease a van, which is great. The difference was about $6,000, but the increase in the transportation contract was about $300, so the difference is $3,207.
Question.
Yeah.
We had that special meeting about a van.
Yep,
The end result was we didn't do anything?
Nope, we have a van,
All right.
but we don't need to have a $6,000 lease in the van, because now we paid for the van outright.
Oh, all right. That was a little confusing to me.
Yeah. So here are areas where we have some risk exposure. K-8 enrollments in grades 4, 5, 6, and 7 are kind of near tipping points. We have no new teachers in there. Were enrollment to increase. However, if it was in one place, we have in the trust enough to pay for that teacher. So we figure, okay, we'll use that as, in Rusty's term, as an insurance policy. Unfunded out-of-district placement, well, if it happens, or if somebody else happens, we have the special ed trust, so we can cover, potential exposure. We can't cover one like we had a couple of years ago, which is $300,000, but we can cover two smaller ones. Heating costs, we'll just hope for a warm winter. Repairs to building, we have the maintenance trust if something catastrophic happens. Unfunded mandates, like the one that has to do with security and online security and stuff like that. Now, there's no way we can control that. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to do it. Filling open positions, we're in good position. We have a school that has a very high morale and is a pleasant place to work, and that's probably the biggest drawing factor, even more than salary probably. High school enrollment, we have the high school trust, $623,000, which wasn't what our plan was to have that much, but that's what we have. In terms of closed roads, snow, locust rentals, home sales, births, I don't know what to tell you. We'll have to ride that out together. And that's the end. So, I will love to answer questions for people. Janet Mitchell, who is our business manager, is here. This is Janet. This is Janet's third year, right? She's done a great job. She was an incredibly hard worker. We have representation from our board. This is Matt. You guys all know, but Matt is the vice chair and serves on the finance committee and on the
Policy.
policy committee, that's right, how could I forget the policy
I don't know.
committee? Vince is this is his first year. He's actually been one of the fastest learning curve people I've ever met. And is really helping us do analytics around finance and looking at budget, and also with the technology piece that we've been kind of, given, which is, we're grateful for his input. But he's also somebody that can answer and respond to questions. So,
Jeff?
yes.
What is the percentage of the total budget that goes to the, contract? Is it 40% represents all the salaries?
So, like,
So 40% is roughly correct.
Salaries are all salaries?
Yeah.
All, you mean
Yeah,
not
all
just
in.
salaries,
Yeah,
but
all
the
in,
entire.
40%, right?
Yeah.
I had that right,
Yeah.
okay. So have you figured out what that, potentially, let's use what you did for staff, what that bottom line would
what
be?
2.5 is, what the amount of 2.5 is?
Yeah, but 40%, 2.5 to the bottom line, just,
So just as a rough, I
It's a
just
rough.
did a rough math the
Yeah,
other night, it was
right.
about 38,000.
so 38,000.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so it's
that
pretty
didn't have
flat then with that, okay. That's what I was thinking, I just wanted to confirm.
For all people not in the CBA?
The
that-
CBA,
No, for
yeah,
the-
with the CBA.
Oh,
If
with
you
the
had-
CBA.
yes.
Oh, that I don't know, because the CBA is still in negotiation.
No, I know, but if we based it on the 2.5 that you use for the staff, and it represents 40%, the employee cost in aggregate represents about 40% of the cost.
It's 40%, 5.
Yeah, so what's that, I just.
100 grand.
Thank you.
You think that's what it'll go up?
So it still keeps it flat. I mean, the fact is you're coming in with a
The,
flat budget.
Do you think
So-
it'll be 2.5% though?
No, so,
the existing CBA, which you could look at, has step and track amounts of 4.25%. Health insurance, we know
Right, I'm
is
just trying to get a rough
going
number
up
to
by
say what the bottom
5%.
line.
our overall goal
For just
with
the
the
cost.
warrant,
With the warrant.
with the
would be
warrant,
flat.
would it be flat or slightly below?
Right, that's what
Yeah.
thank you, that's what I was trying to.
Yeah, our budgeting goal, with consideration of the CBA
Is flat.
warrant, would be to be flat or
Right.
slightly below.
It's just so that it helps understand what they're looking
Yeah.
at without.
So
if my
without the
math back
CBA,
in there.
you're like, well, if that added 5%, that's a different conversation
Right,
than.
exactly,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah,
That's what I was
so,
trying to-
yes, again, we actually aren't, actually are not a part of the negotiations, but those members of the negotiation team aren't, at this point, allowed to speak to it.
No, I know, I'm not asking
No,
you
no,
to speak,
I'm
I'm just trying
telling,
to.
I'm sure you know it, but I just wanna make sure everyone else knows it. That, they're not allowed to share aspects of the negotiation, but what we are looking for is, again, to budget to a flat to a slightly below 0
Year over year.
year over year.
Perfect, that was what I wanted to
Jeff?
Yes.
The only warrant article not involving money that you anticipate will be the teacher's contract.
Correct.
You don't have a warrant article to put money into any of the trust funds, they're all adequately funded as you see
Yeah.
them now.
Yes, I believe that to be the case. We might look at adding some to maintenance or the retirement, because the retirement obligation isn't fully met. But I don't think we're talking about significant amounts of money. You know, we might, well, every amount is significant, but nothing in the order more than like 10,000. If that, again, we haven't discussed warrants but we don't, unless it's the advisement from this committee or something else as we look at the long-term plan, we don't intend to put anything in the high school trust. Special education, I think that if we could hold it about 250, because that would cover most of a catastrophic placement. And if we had to draw for a $100,000 one, we could increase that back up to 250 over a few years. And the teacher enrollment stabilization trust is just pegged to, what a, experienced teacher with health insurance would require.
Yeah, but the question on that one is how many how many classes you have to split.
Right.
And
Well-
if you're looking at your student numbers in some of the classes, they look as though they're getting pretty close to a split. Now, I don't know how many of those would result in an additional split over what you have in your baseline.
Right.
So some of those that you saw up there that were near going into high school, are ones that are already split.
Right now, we have 2 splits in the middle school, or 3 splits in the middle school, 1 split in the lower school. Next year, we expect to have 1 in the lower school, 1 in the middle school. We're reducing one of the splits in middle school to be a single section. One of our classes in the lower school, if it were to pick up 2 or 3 students, would be one of our largest classes and probably require a split. Right now, they're at 22 or 23. And so, if they picked up 3 students, yeah, we'd be looking at a split.
All right, now is the cost the same for middle school teachers and lower school teachers?
It's all based upon experience and the CBA. But again, what we're trying to do in these budgets is, we don't want to build in the expectation of something that might happen if we have a trust to support that expense. There is a chance that 2 classes split. Yep. And in that case, we'd have to pull that, we'd have to find about $100,000 beyond the, or not 100, but, 90 or something like that from the general budget. That's what has to happen. In New Hampshire, we're not allowed to overspend our budget in anything other than special ed. If we needed to do it, we'd have to petition the Supreme Court and ask for a special town meeting. What's that?
I think
Superior, not Supreme.
Yeah. Yeah, the super duper court. And then they'd have to approve the merit of that, and give us the authority to do so.
Or
It's
have
not
a
a pretty
special
scene.
meeting.
What's that?
Or have a special school district meeting
We have to get
Oh,
approval from the,
to hold it.
which court is it?
Superior.
Superior.
Superior. The Supreme.
I know as it means it better than me.
Yeah, we've been there before.
Yeah, Scott?
I have it's more closer to a line item question, but
Yep.
you mentioned that the propane costs are going up and pellets are going down, and I just wanted to find out if.
Yeah, so the big reason for that is because every year we get a energy rebate by selling carbon credits on the commodity market or something. We have somebody here in town that does it for us. It's awesome. And what we do is we apply that to the pellet cost. And so that's why we reduced it, because we anticipate again this year, it is about $6,000 that we get, well, anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 over the past. We don't know what it's going to be, but that's what we're guessing. I'm just trying to open this thing back up and I can't even see it.
And then the propane was going from like 4,000 to 7,000.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, so, basically what's happened is there have been times that the pellet stove, went offline, and then the propane had to pick it up. And then also in kind of those hip seasons, it's more economic to run the pellet, the propane than the pellet. And so this kind of, malingering entry into winter, that we've had, recently has required that we burn more of that propane.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions from the budget committee? Questions from the public? Comments? My goodness.
I'll have one.
Good.
Can I get you back to reviewing your enrollment
Yep.
for this year and the expected surplus or less money that you're gonna spend?
Yeah, let me, oh, here,
I believe you said it was around $220,000?
Yep.
So then you go to your next couple of slides where you predict the savings. Those savings that you predicted are based on the budget and not net of what you know are current expenditures. So you're looking at $89,000 there?
So the high school is based on the predicted enrollment, not based on the prior budget.
I'm not talking about prior, I'm talking about current budget. I
Yep.
thought I heard Jeff say that even this year, our enrollment is down over what we expected in the 220 budget.
Our enrollment this year,
It's down 11 students.
11 students, yes.
That's a huge savings.
Yep.
That savings is not reflective of those numbers, is what I'm saying.
We are budgeting for next year.
I am, okay, but what?
And it's based
But
on
you're
the numbers.
comparing it to the budget of this year, and the budget of this year is up $200,000 over what it actually will be.
But I guess I don't understand, because the number that's there is based on the projected enrollment for next year. It's not based on the enrollment
Not
this year.
that number. That number is the difference between last year's
That's
budget,
right.
the 220 budget,
That's right.
and the 221 budget.
Right.
It's incorporated.
Now I'm
That's right.
saying that the 220 budget
Is
was
overstated.
overstated by $200,000,
Right.
Well,
Which you know today.
and you know that.
Yep.
right.
But here's,
But the
again, we're
numbers
doing it by
change.
actual count of heads, and we're saying 3 fewer. So, yes, last year we expected 101 at the tuition that were set for last year. This year, we're expecting 97 at higher tuitions, the outcome of which is less $17,971.
There's a 2.5%
Well,
increase.
I think the issue here boils down to, you're comparing budget to budget.
Yep.
Rather than next year's budget to this year's actual. And I think that's what's causing the confusion here
All right,
on
so
the numbers.
But we don't have actuals. We
That's
can
right,
project them,
you're
and
doing a
this
budget
is
to
the
budget
case where-
comparison.
if,
And that's why it doesn't account
that-
for the
that
fewer
is-
students.
historically, that's what the budget committee has asked for, is a budget to budget comparison.
Well,
And what we're doing is we're doing budget to budget with actuals. When we build this budget, we build it from a zero-sum budget, and we say, all right, let's look at every line. What do we need? What are the increases? Our healthcare insurance, which is one of the fastest driving forces and a very large driving force of the overall cost of the budget, is increased 5%. We're giving you a budget that is down 1.64%. So while there are increases in a lot of different areas, we're showing you less of an overall increase than would be reflected by all of those changes.
I'm just gonna ask you to take your current budget and compare it to the 219 actuals which you have complete, and use those differences to compare to what you're doing is budget to budget changes, and you can see those changes.
When we build a budget, we look at what we actually spent the year before, and we say, all right, well, what have we spent over the last 3 years?
There are the vast majority of the lines, that is the process. Going further back, looking at budgeted to actual, seeing where we are over or under spending, and then adjusting what we budgeted for next year based on that. This in particular is one where that's just not a useful exercise, because the enrollment numbers change so significantly that I'm not sure that helps us in this case, right?
Okay.
So, but we certainly go through that exercise, or I do at least, of saying, okay, we have X number of fewer students, we know what the per student cost is, that brings that default high school budget number down by that much, and then there's a 2.5% increase across all of it. You know, sort of where does that put us in that category? But it's not, and we do that, but it's not one that we can necessarily control those individual numbers, although we are working to do what we can do to negotiate with the other districts and control those numbers. That's a part of the process that's ongoing and why we don't have those.
So I've met with the Hanover superintendent and the business manager several times this year. We've worked out among the three of us a scenario that would help reduce the cost of the tuition to Hanover. They presented it to their budget, or their board last night. I spoke to them this evening, and the board said, well, basically they're 50-50 between whether they would consider such an arrangement or not, but they want to meet with us, their board wants to meet directly with us and talk through the scenario. When that's completed, when we know how much we want to reduce from the high school trust, though, and when we know what the tuition is from the other schools, all those things are gonna flow right in, and hopefully will reduce the number from where it is now if they don't increase by 2.5%.
So, another point to take a look at is in your guidance numbers. I think it's misleading to tell people that you only have a 7% increase in guidance, when over the last 2 years from real actuals, you're almost double. You have a 92.8% increase in
Right,
guidance.
because we increased the full, guidance from part-time to full-time.
Again, that's a number that should be explained and not covered as 7% increase. It's another 7% over.
2 years ago, right? I mean, so do you want us to go back 10 years and say, every year, for the last 10 years, it's
Say
increased
10
by
years,
this?
Jeff.
No, but,
I said, looking at what actuals you have
yeah,
and compare those actuals to current budget and show the increases that you're expecting over an education that ended in July of last year. It's not that far away. And so how much more are we asking for in this budget over what we actually spent in 2019 fiscal year? Or if you can, by the time you get to March, we're only 3 months away from knowing the actuals for 2020. I mean, we should be getting some prediction as to where we are, and that's where we are with education of the high school student. What I'm saying here is to be true to what we're showing from, you're not really saving $89,000 here.
nobody said we're saving anything. We're saying we reduced the budget from the prior budget.
Oh, well, it looks like you're saving $89,000 over there. And what we're really saying is we're still gonna spend more money on high school than we did in this current year.
Yep.
We need to show that. I mean, because that's really what it's saying. It doesn't look like our high school costs are going down. Our high school costs, in fact, are going up. But the budget we created was a hypothetical number based on your way of thinking, I understand,
As is this.
as is this. But it still is, I think you gotta compare it to actuals, so.
Rusty, did you get the handout, because the actuals are, they're
I
on
do,
it.
and that's what I'm looking at
Yeah.
right here, and I'm seeing these actuals and I'm going.
So, I mean, the bottom line, total operations for 2019 are there. 2 lines over from, 2 columns over from the budget for next year.
That's right, so what you're suggesting in your totals here, I believe, is like a 1.6% reduction, when in fact it's a 4% increase over the actual.
The actual is lower yet.
We're still,
No, the actual for 2019 year, the year before, I'm just saying. So it's not this year's actual, but it's the year before.
No, it's $97,000 lower.
It's a 2-year change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is
I'm looking at row I,
219 actual.
332 to 6.923 versus budgeted of 7.2.
Oh, so you're not looking at total operations.
Total operating budget?
I'm at 332, total operating budget.
That's the actual. This is the budget, we're operating on. This is the proposed.
we're not done with this year yet, just so that.
And I'm looking at 19.
I know, he wants.
I don't have a,
276,000 is more than the actual spent.
You're on a different line though, he's looking at the total operating budget.
But,
that's
budget.
No, this is budget.
That's budget.
And we don't know the budget. The budget this year is gonna have a surplus. I mean, I fully expect you're gonna see a surplus, particularly in light of the fact that you already said We're looking at
Or at least that's what
$200,000
Chris
in
is looking at,
surplus
is
over,
more hours.
Because we have fewer students.
because of fewer
And
students.
what are we doing with that surplus? We're returning to the taxpayers.
I get that, but this is the budget process, Jeff, it's not the actual end result tax. This is budget process, and this is what we're talking about.
It's a philosophical.
So you're budgeting right now $276,516 more than you actually spent in 2019. budget.
2019, 2 years ago, yes.
2 years ago. So some of that I get is gonna go up, but
So,
I don't know where it is.
Is this,
Yeah, your point is made, Rusty,
Thank you.
that if you look at actual and look at budget, there is a significant increase as compared to when you look at budget versus budget. I think that's the point you made, and you think budget versus budget is not a true representation of what's happening. I think that
And you want-
summarizes what we just went
and
through.
so if we were to do that, we'd have to go back 2 years to go actual to budget.
Well, I mean, the town doesn't, I'm not suggesting we do this necessarily, but the town does it by showing your year-to-date expenditures, actual year-to-date expenditures versus the budget.
But that's because the.
Well, you could, Rusty's point is you could theoretically, do that for
Extrapolate.
the school too. Yeah,
We
that's what we do.
we can't for a lot of it, and because it's, I mean, the costs are encumbered, so,
I'm sorry, what?
I mean, so much of it is encumbered that I think Janet would.
Yeah, so I do
recommend
report on that in
Yeah.
the board meetings, and I do try to project a fund balance going forward.
Yeah.
And of course, our encumbrance process depends completely on purchase orders and what has been, and what he's saying is encumbered as monies that are actually going to be spent. Right now, so far this year, we have additional revenue that we were not intending on, which is part of the process is not just what you spent under your budget, but what you have for additional revenues, that makes what your fund balance is. So this year, we have 55,925 so far in revenue that we were not anticipating. And then that coupled with looking forward, we're looking heavily encumbered that we would have 178,000 less expenditures.
Primarily because of the high school situation?
High school and other items and other
Yeah.
line items that are coming in under. So right now, I have projected a surplus of 234,753
Gotcha.
at the end of the year, but we're only halfway through the year.
I understand, yeah.
That's another thing that makes this comparison difficult, because the town now is in the last month of their quote prior year, where the school has still got 6 months to go in their budget. So it would be like trying to figure out the town's budget in June for comparison purposes, which is a good argument for going budget versus budget with zero-based budgeting for enrollments, which is basically what you said you've done. Yeah.
so for the next meeting, I think it'd be helpful to have the enrollment numbers for each year, and including, your projected. I know you did high school, but it'd be fun to get.
Yeah, I'll get to you right now.
No, I just, so that we can look at it and compare it to what was projected versus actuals, because there's a big difference every year. So
Yeah.
that would be helpful. Also, the number one driver is FTEs, so understanding FTEs each year. So what are you projecting for 2021 versus 2020?
Right, so 0, yeah.
So then, how much of the budget is salary and benefit related? I heard 40%
Under the CBA.
under the CBA, but then the non-CBA is also, I would guess, 30% from rough calculations. So 70%, 40% is CBA, 30% is roughly, we're budgeting 2.5%. So the two big drivers for me are headcount and FTEs. So if we could understand that, I think we'd have a better idea of,
Yeah.
are we increasing costs per student? And how much, and why?
Right, and that's the big question is, the budget keeps going up, which is to be expected to some extent because costs are gonna go up year to year.
Mhm.
But then it's hard to capture why this is happening, particularly when there are these surpluses and we can't, like, it's not easy to track back and figure out, like, if you really wanted to understand, as I do, for reasons that don't have anything to do with sitting at this table, it's just a general curiosity, why are school costs going up? And it's really hard to answer those questions because the real numbers are in here, but they're not. They're hard to, it's hard to unpack all that.
And if we have 11 fewer high school students times whatever, $20,000 per student, that's $220,000 of savings in the current year.
Right, that will be returned in the following year.
But again, when we're building a budget, we wanna make sure we're building that budget based upon what we actually expect, not comparing it to a budget that is overstated by 11. Because we assumed there were gonna be more high school students.
Yep. But the high school enrollment, the high school number is literally 3 less than the people that we can go and tap on their head and say, hi, you're here.
But when we're presenting it, we're presenting it as a savings.
I'm saying this is the cost, I'm not saying anything
Cost.
about savings.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm just saying this is what the cost of the school
we're
is.
looking at total budget and students, and I agree. If we can get those numbers, we can all agree on what we're spending, I think.
Asked another way, given that, just ballpark, we're trying to keep the budget at 0.
Yeah.
Where did the 220 go? Where's that being spent, is kind of the question, and that's gonna come up if we have what Chris is
Yeah, so
asking
it's not-
for.
It's important that it's not 220 if you move it forward with a 2.5% increase on the whole high school line, right? So the high school line is,
1 point.
yeah, so there's a 2.5% bump on that to start with, right? So that eats into that 220 relatively sizably. And then if we are actually projecting that there will be, 5 more students, then that's another 110.
It's
So,
exact, yeah, but
yeah.
that's actually, that's
Yeah,
what
no.
that's what we're asking
But
for,
I do
that's what we
think-
wanna
Yeah,
understand.
and I do think it's the right thing to do. You have to, that's right, but I guess it's also important to point out that a lot of that comes back right in that same line because of how those numbers fluctuate. And, as I think was hammered home, it's a prediction, and historically not a good prediction in both directions. I mean, better this than the +13 that happened before, but.
I'm sitting here and thinking to myself, it was 2 years ago that I said, it's my goal before I retire to bring a 0% budget, and people thought that was a riot. I just did it, and we're complaining about.
Well, you didn't necessarily do it because you don't have the CBA there and you don't have the warrant, and you know that's gonna go up.
And it's,
You have to.
and I don't think people are
So I think
complaining,
it's
Jeff.
unfair
And
to
the other
say
thing to
it's
remember
0.
is that you, at that time, you had not projected a 20 student decline in high school enrollment
Right.
2 years ago. So, it's a different environment today, that's all.
I completely agree with you. I mean, every year is a completely different environment. And what we're doing is we're trying to bring the actual numbers and say, all right, so we look at every single line, we're like, all right, this is what we spent last year, this is what we spent this year, this is what healthcare cost is gonna be, this is what dental, this is what the teachers negotiated, all of those things, and we're counting heads. And we build from 0. And it sounds to me like that is not heard. That we're just building budget to budget, slapping more on top of what we did the year before, which is not what we're doing.
Well,
I don't think that's true. I'd say like a couple things. First, I don't think that, at least me personally, I don't expect you to come with a 0% increase. I don't see that as sustainable or possible unless you start taking things away, right? And so we can have an argument if we want to start taking things away. I see my sense is that a lot of the increases are coming from uncontrollable costs. But again, I think we need to see that demonstrated, that it is actually health insurance, retirement costs, building costs, things that have gone up since 2012 for a variety of reasons that like I won't get into. My other point is more about the actual versus the budgeted. I have to honestly say, I do, there is something there that I see the point, that there's something there. You are asking taxpayers for money, and you're presenting numbers to them, and you're presenting like this year to year to year, this is my increase over last year, and it seems not transparent to say
Okay, can I
the
suggest something else?
previous
Can I suggest
year,
something
it
else?
wasn't really true, that
Can I
increase.
suggest something else? We are not asking you for anything. You're asking us to provide an education. You're asking us to tell you what the education costs. We are not telling you this is what you have to do. You are asking us as a society to say, you provide the education. The people in education are saying, we will pick up that mantle, we are happy to do it with this. This is what we think it will cost. If you don't want the education, if you don't want us to spend in the lines where it is, you can say it, and you will get the education. Not that educators can provide, but that you will fund. So, I think what we have to recognize is both the interests of the community that we take very seriously in controlling costs, without the accusation that we're extorting this money from you. I'm not
I
saying.
don't think you,
No,
I mean,
no,
I
I'm not
absolutely don't
saying-
think you
no.
are, but
But
I
I'm saying
think
that seems, that is a message.
I think that's taking it correctly, and I
Yeah.
think you're taking this personally. And I think we're all here to be very supportive, and I think I understand healthcare costs going up, and I understand salaries going up, and all of these things going up. What I'm only asking for is, if there actually is a decrease, and we know costs are going up, it must be headcount in students. So I'm just trying to understand the relationship there. So when we say there's a savings, we're not savings, everything's going up, but we have fewer students. So just understanding that, and this is not meant to be controversial.
Okay.
We're ready to move on?
Can we get a question back here?
Earl?
It maybe you tried to cover it, I maybe didn't hear everything. On special education, do you have, I see it sprinkled all through here in different ways.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as a cost of special education? All the little nits and grannies put together, and where that is going. And I guess that, asking you personally, because you're in the business, what's the future of special education? What is being done to get a handle on it, if anything, there?
So, what I would say is, special education is being shaped by legislation.
I understand that.
Right. So, the way that the budget is put together is, in our case, it's divided between high school and regular education, just so that we can do that. I'm not sure that's your question, though.
Well, the one thing, and then I guess us guys and gals in here can't do much about it, but I just have a feeling that we accept this legislation and go on from there. I don't know if maybe I'm rambling on, but I just don't know if we put enough effort or interest in trying to make the legislation more more advantageous. Originally, if I'm not mistaken, the federal government was supposed to take over the whole thing. So what happened?
We elected the wrong officials to government.
Well, no, I know we're in the political thing, but, it just bothers me that we almost accept what's happening, which isn't gonna change this budget one iota, I understand, just my
No.
rambling.
And, no, I don't think you are rambling, because it's something that is is a really, and in the past, I've shown slides about this, about just a kind of, federal government passes laws, and then, it's unfunded, and they pass that on to states. The federal government, they pass laws there, and they are also simultaneously saying, and we do reduce taxes. Great, which all means that they've just not funded the things that they pass them on the state. And the state's in the same way, they're like,
I
hey,
understand.
and ultimately where it falls is right here, where we don't have the ability to, well, we all as individuals have the right to vote and to pass, or to vote in the people who are gonna pass laws. But as a school, we're kind of hamstrung by, all right, so we've been told that we have to follow this law, otherwise, like Hanover right now, just talking to the superintendent, he's got 12 lawsuits that they're fighting right now over special ed. And their budget for legal services, you know, rivals our special ed budget. And so, but schools have, in some cases, they've done the bean counting, and they said, well, in their case, it saves us money, it reduces the services we're giving kids, gives that money to lawyers, but in an overall thing, might save us $10,000 or something like that.
Sorry to put you guys out on a tangent, but I just think I don't know. I just think we're swallowing a pill and going on to the next thing and not worry about it. Because I've known families and instances many times in the past that funds spent on special education has taken it away from the, and I don't mean to be unsympathetic or cruel, but it's taking away from the educating the population that's gonna run the country in 30 years, so what if you want to say. Anyway, sorry to get you off on a tangent.
No, it's not a tangent, it's what we live and breathe every day. It's the dilemma of the fact that one student can cost X and another student can be magnitudes above that.
And we're very fortunate, if you take Wentworth or some of these little rinky-dink towns, and they have a situation like this, I don't even know how they manage it, I really don't. Sorry to
Nope.
take up your time.
Anything else, anybody?
And I just wanted to make a couple of points. When you guys are looking at the high school numbers and you're comparing one year to the next, any year in which we anticipate or say that we're gonna use trust funds, that number is suppressed. The number that's in the budget is suppressed by the $50,000 that we anticipate using from trust. So it creates an anomaly when you're looking at it. If you're trying to compare it as to head count, it will not give you that number will not tell you how many kids are there. So I just want to make that point. The other point I want to make is, Russ, you were looking at the total operating budget. I would steer you to the next number down, the total budget with grants. And the reason why I say that is because when you're looking at the total number, 2019 actual with grants, we actually on the revenue side have grant money that is given to us from the federal government. And that is calculated into the revenue side mix of what's raised from taxes. So it's that
But we're only here
budget
on the
with
budget side
grants.
tonight. That's
It increases the expenditures, but you also have offsetting revenue. So that's the number that's gonna give you the level, the right,
Appropriations.
yeah,
Right.
the right.
But some of those
perspective.
expenses, if you told me this before, some of those grant items are line item expenses that are not in our budget.
Right, but the point of what you're trying to do is to look at, you wanna look at apples to apples, not apples to oranges, and that's the number that would give you the apple to apple comparison. And the revenue side is where you're creating fund balance from. So I would just steer you to that
Right.
level when you're looking at the expenditure side.
So from,
Wait a minute.
I don't want to interrupt, it's some entirely different topic.
Sure, go ahead.
The library, and I'm relatively new to town, I don't know what the library services that you're asking funding for, how do they interact with the town library,
Yeah.
and what value do they add on top of the town library?
So the library in Lyme is, or library in this town, as a town between the town and the school is really unique. I think we're the last town, municipality, that has kind of a shared relationship between the school library and the town library. The library costs, in our case, is primarily the staff member. And the staff member is fulfilling both the responsibilities of technology and library. In the library case, she is, doing a lot of direct instruction with kids, not as much kind of collection management, not as much of the administrative parts of what it takes to run a library. That's primarily done by our Converse Free Library. What our librarian will often do is bring portions of the collection from the library that deal with the subject that one of the classes is studying for, so that they bring it over and they share that with the kids. Or the kids might go over to the library with the librarian and take out the books there. So most of our cost is associated with that individual. We do have $1,000 for books in there. We've just completed, had a meeting with the library in which Judy was sharing, some of the long-term challenges of the library's experiencing. And what we're looking at, again, is ways that we can utilize the kind of combination of the two entities to make sure that we're not duplicating expenses, that we're fully utilizing the staffs to fulfill the different needs and responsibilities of.
So it's kind of like having another teacher on board, sort of?
What's that?
Kind of like having another teacher on board?
The library person?
The librarian.
The librarian is another teacher, yes.
Okay, all right. And you don't have a physical plant in the school?
No.
That's called the library?
No, that's across the street. We do have what's called a commons, where we have, we do library instruction, and we might hold a collection of books that's relevant to the middle school for that 6 weeks, that moved over from the library to that space.
It's a mandated position.
Yeah, school librarian is.
That is a
Yeah.
mandated position, you have to have something.
School, to meet school adequacy.
Yeah, what's the name of the role, the specialist,
Library media specialist.
thank you, and that is a
The
position
reason it's gone up now is because it's now full-time as opposed to part-time.
No, it's because we budgeted, again, we budgeted for somebody that had essentially no experience, a bachelor's degree in single insurance. And the person we ended up hiring had a master's degree and had significantly more experience. So we were just, again, when we have a position we have to fill, we have to put something there. We thought we were gonna be able to, or not be able to find somebody with actual experience being a librarian, which wasn't the case previously.
All right.
Thanks.
Anything else on the school? All right, we have,
I would say, I wanna make sure that everyone knows, Rusty knows this, and I wanna make sure everybody is aware. We have budget meetings, finance meetings, in which we're going over and building these budgets. Those meetings are open to the public. It would be wonderful to get input, at those stages, so that we can understand, clarify perspectives, understand the decisions we're making, get feedback on the decisions that we're making, and understand it. It would also furthermore be really helpful to know, does the budget committee, what are the expectations? Do you want us to go by budget to budget? Do you want us to go actuals to budget? And knowing that really helps, because we build based upon the presumptions, historical presumptions that we've made about how you like us to operate, what you like us to build or bring to you. Not knowing that, or being presented at this stage with, well, you should have done this, or you could have done this, is not as helpful to come and have a constructive conversation where we feel like we're prepared with the information that is being asked for. Historically, the expectation is budget to budget. If you disagree with that, you just have to give us a heads up and let us know, and we'll bring the budget to actual.
All right, I think the
It's
issue
not easy to
here is
know when they have it.
budget to budget almost
Yeah,
has to be
yeah,
done in
I've done it
school,
every
because you've
time
got
we meet.
6 months to go in the year. It's not like the town budget where you got a week to go. But the enrollment figures and the things that are driven by enrollment, for example, high school tuition and the number of full-time teachers, i.e. splitting classes, those are based on enrollment.
Yep.
So that in a sense, you've got the 2 biggest single chunks in the budget are based on enrollment rather than a comparison of last year to this year budget. In other words, the budget of your salary is gonna be a valid comparison. That's not gonna change the superintendent or the business manager or the janitor. But the number of teachers, which is where this FTE issue comes in, is gonna change based on enrollment. And that's gonna be the driver on any changes in the teacher pay.
And that's certainly true for high school.
And high school.
Well,
And special ed.
right, it's mostly true for high school. In terms of elementary school, it's actually based upon threshold costs.
It's
So-
step functions on your number of teachers, basically.
So, you know, the first 20 kids in a class.
Cost the same.
Cost the same. As soon as you hit 25, the cost doubles. So it is enrollment, but it's also the distribution of that enrollment across the classes. If we had even distribution across all the classes, our total enrollment could be much higher than, and our FTE count could be very different than if it were that we had very few in one class and a really big in another, and a few in another, and a very big in another. That is actually what drives an increase in our FTEs. That, and then also the number of students with IEPs drives the number of special educators that we need.
So I think it's complex in the fact that certain things are very easy to compare budget year to budget year, and certain things are really based on enrollment. And I don't know how you divide the quote between the two. But you're heading at FTEs is a way to look at it, because as you increase FTEs, obviously each FTE costs you close to 100,000.
If they get full family medical.
Yeah. You have to count when you hire a new person on that.
Yeah.
I think Dave Roby had a comment he wanted to make.
I just wanted to thank you for bringing in a budget. It's a reduction.
It's not a savings.
And that's what counts for the
But it's
taxpayer.
not all here yet.
But I also, more importantly, or equally importantly, I want to thank you for the dedication that you exhibit. You build these budgets, as I understand it, line by line. You don't look at last year, you look at what you have to do for this year. And it's, there's a lot of luck involved here. As the student population fluctuates, the taxes will go up or down, out of your control. All you can do is to keep doing what you are doing, which is to create a school or be an important part of a school that is doing an exceptional job. One of the best in the whole state, with happy students and happy teachers. You know, you should get standing applause. I'm not gonna stand up.
And I apologize if my reactions, but it is something that is keenly felt, and I don't mean to impinge on people's intent, but I do wish to communicate how it's perceived, at least by me. And so you know, what I am committed to and what I have been committed to for 14 years is bringing an accurate budget, and there are some things I can't control. And I try to share that with the budget committee so that they can understand those things and help guide us in understanding the choices that we make. And when it feels like it's that way, it's great.
All right, now, Judy wants to talk about the new firehouse for a few minutes before we adjourn.
There's me and there's room for each of you folks there. So, change of subject, thank you, Jeff, for that. The Board of Selectmen would really like sort of the same, similar type of open discussion that we've just had. We've got an estimated project cost for the new fire station at 1.3 million. We have, we believe there is a fundraising effort that's gonna reach about 400,000 of private donations, and we have about 400,000 in the Public Works Capital Reserve Fund balance, which leaves 500,000 outstanding. There are funding options. This committee last year suggested for the fire truck that we might consider a financing. Dina has looked into just a straightforward loan, not the bond bank, not bond financing, 500,000 for 7 years. We can get a 3.25% loan. That's very enticing to the Board of Selectmen. We'd like to have that discussion because the alternative is probably a warrant article for either less than the needed 500,000 or for the full 500,000. But that's a lot of money to come up with, and was not really our goal for our side of the table for this year. So if folks could think maybe briefly here for a minute and give us some suggestions as to thoughts that you might have, we would really appreciate that.
I'd just like to say, I'd like to see what the total is, because prior years, we've had a number of one-time project warrant articles, road repairs, et cetera. And the ability to have an article for 500,000 for a fire station would depend on any of those kind of articles that would be coming down the pike also. So that I don't think we, at least I can't look at 500,000 for the fire station without looking at all the other individual warrant articles.
I can really understand how you feel about that. We haven't really put together other warrant articles because we need 500,000, that'll be it. There won't be other warrant articles.
The intent would be to start construction in 2020?
This summer, yes,
Summer.
the intent is to start this summer.
I think the financing option is really attractive. You know, if I had a, I think of my own perspective, if I have a choice between putting $500,000 under the mattress, getting 0% interest, or funding it over 7 years, and, you know, I'd like to jump at the 7 year at 3.25% fixed rate.
Thank you, Eric, that's really helpful.
So-
other-
Is that construction cost, is that fixed, is you have a signed contract for 1.3?
We do not at this point, but that is the projected cost that we have heard from the chief, the fire chief, and the person who's helping him. They do have preliminary plans drawn up, they've gotten cost estimates.
Okay. But you don't really know what that number's gonna be at this point?
I
And
personally would not want to pledge my house on that number.
Having recently built a house in this town, I know that that's a pretty cheap price to build a big fire station, I think.
The people who are involved in that, I'm very familiar with, and one of the persons that's been consulted on this was the group that did the school.
And they came under budget
They
and on
came-
time.
So I think that they probably, who knows what the final number's gonna be, but I'd be extremely surprised if it was, 20% more than that. You know, it's,
That would be reassuring, and if so, I would agree that financing is probably the best way to go. It seems to be the cheapest way to go.
Same.
I would love to finance it. Makes sense to me.
You have a volunteer.
We'll be right over to your house.
Bank of Jen, yeah. Well, I'll have to rephrase my answer. I agree with the conceptually. Financing the construction of the firehouse, all or in part.
Yeah,
I think one question, and I think that this gets to something that Mike Mundy had said, was the unknown of the fundraising effort, and he had advocated a warrant article for full funding for that reason. So if we write a warrant article to finance $500,000, and then the fundraising effort comes in $100,000 short, we can't do anything. And that was his concern.
that's a decent concern, because, one of the things we talked about was, at some point, there's just a finite amount of money. And at some point, it's gonna behoove that group to say, we can't come in with an extra 100,000, you gotta meet this, something's gotta come out of the plan. That at least has been my experience over the years with projects that I was involved with. Otherwise, it's always easy to, you do a little change here, and you do a little change there, and you do a little change there, and pretty soon you're 200,000 over what you thought you were gonna be.
And then in terms of the voting, does this change the percent of people that?
2/3,
vote
you'll
yes?
need 2/3.
Do you have a general sense of how people in Lyme feel about the fire station?
I think they're
Pretty
all in
supportive.
favor of it, they're
Okay.
very supportive, and they'd like, it's been sort of on hold for a long time.
Mhm.
There is a serious need there for it, but, I don't know.
So I support financing. Is there a date certain that we can get an update on what has actually been pledged and donated, so that we know what the warrant article is gonna be?
I-
With more certainty?
With more certainty? I
Well,
don't,
before your public hearing, you'll have to
Right.
know.
yes, we
February.
will have to
So
know
it'll
before the
be
public hearing.
January.
It's, coming right up here, January
Yeah.
22nd
Yeah.
is when we have to vote, but we would hope to have the information before then, because if we're gonna do financing, that will give us an option to probably have a couple of other very small warrant articles that, we might be able to do something with, otherwise, it would be right here. I think
That's what I'm
2/3
afraid
vote.
of.
Well, there's nothing big coming down the pipe, but as soon as we have some information, we can, I'm sure, get it out over the, Dina can send it out to the budget committee members, but we'll get from the fire chief and the people he's working with, and we'll see if we can get them to nail down closer and let you know. I don't believe, that the board of selectmen ourselves are gonna wanna see a warrant article for more than 500,000, even with financing.
So I'm in agreement with financing.
The financing
Yep.
seems to be, so other than the little consideration for knowing what the whole picture is, I would say that this committee would recommend a warrant article with a financing.
Yeah, I would say that's a non-committed sense of the meeting. Dave, you
you.
wanted to say something?
The life expectancy of the fire station is more than 7 years.
Yes,
Why
better
not?
be.
Yeah. Why not explore longer-term financing?
Well,
10 years, 15
we
years,
can do a 10-year, I think the rate then is 3.5%.
Yep,
the rate goes up.
yep.
Yep,
We chose to go with a 10-year because that was the break point between a rate that was up to 10 years and beyond 10 years. And the way that we looked at it is, there's gonna be an entire generation of people that will get the benefits of the roof.
right,
So everyone pays for it as opposed to just the people that live in town for the year that you built it.
right.
That's generally how I think of financing as well. New people, everybody pays for the benefit of the
Well, I think
structure.
there's a little difference too here with the town, because it seems as if we're always having to borrow something for something. So therefore, I think it's not like a house, once you pay for your house, you don't have another mortgage. I think the town is in a position where once we pay for the firehouse,
Then we're gonna do
comes the
something
town
else.
offices
Yeah.
or a school edition or something
There's
like
not gonna be a
this.
school edition.
No,
We have
because
a room for
there always seems to be something that comes up just about the time we finish paying off the bond.
And I say that, but I couldn't guess 11, losing 11 either, so.
So I think it's a little different view that you have to look at it compared to your personal financing in that sense.
Judy, just, could you run those numbers, one more time? There's 450,000 in the capital reserve, the building
Right.
fund?
Right now, I believe there's about 400,000 in there.
Should be 450, I think.
No, we had 350 and last year we put 50 in, so that made 400.
Going backwards.
And fundraising effort at this point is estimated to be 400,000. The project cost 1.3 million, which leaves 500,000.
Well, you said there was another 100,000 pledged, or is that,
I didn't say there was another 100,000 pledged.
that's not Lyme Foundation?
That's in the.
That's in the 400.
That's in the 400.
Yep. So there's 800 available, and the warrant article would be to make up the difference, which is 500,000.
So financing 500,000.
Financing 500,000 at either a 7-year or a 10-year. And there is a difference in the cost.
And how fortunate are we to live in a town where $400,000 is coming in contributions? That's tremendous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is tremendous. This town has always, with all the building projects, at least since I've lived here, there have always been private donations that have made a big difference.
Any other comments, questions? Yes?
Just background. So, maybe to answer your question, from a, how much we fund our capital reserves, if you were to cut it in half from about 450 down to 2.25, the town could, on the municipal side, could withstand a $500,000 one-time warrant article to complete the fire hall and stay flat from year to year budget-wise. So that's another option. It's really a question of how do we think the town's gonna feel. I mean, we had some pushback on financing with the fire truck and this and that. And so I heard what you said, and so when we come to you next with our warrant articles, knowing that the direction is to finance, we will basically boost back up some of that warrant article funding that we cut back so far to achieve sort of, I don't want to call it worst case scenario, but one scenario of having to fund 500 in March 2020. You already following me? So now that you've given us this direction, I think what we'll do is take that 225,000 that we had skinny down in all these different capital reserve categories and boost them up a little bit, such that we can withstand the payment over a course of 7 or 10 years and fund better some of the capital reserve funds so they don't get skinny down as fast. So that's the implication of what I'm hearing. So I just want to make sure that directionally I'm understanding that that's where you'd like us to go.
I think the town might support financing a building more than they would support financing a vehicle, because it seems like there's more value in a building than there is in a vehicle.
Longer term.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
Financing a police cruiser, I thought was a bad idea.
Cash for your cars.
Well, so let me ask you this. If that's a true statement, should we continue with, because we have a big truck that's gonna be on the 2020 budget.
I don't think we're ready to discuss that yet, Kevin.
Well, I can't present to you what I think you wanna hear until I get some direction of what you might want.
That's true.
Is what I heard. And so if that's generally where you think we should go, then that'd be easier for us to get ready.
I think,
The selectmen have to get their
I
act
think
together
we
first.
Well, that's not,
I think we need to look at concrete scenarios within our board, and then we can bring several choices to this committee later. We've gotten good guidance right now, and I think that if we,
I got 75% guidance, I'm good.
okay, my thoughts.
Anything else? Are we ready to accept the motion to adjourn? I see Jennifer nodding. Would you like to make the motion,
I will
Jennifer?
make the motion.
That's
Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjournment?
Can I give you the SIM
Thank you all
card to get
very
it?
much.
Yep, that's Christmas.